There's a strange experiment your brain performs every single day, and most people never realize it's happening. You walk into a room, hesitate for half a second, and suddenly become convinced that everyone is watching you. You replay a sentence after a meeting because maybe you sounded awkward. You post a photo, then check it again an hour later, not because the picture changed, but because you imagine someone else's opinion might have. Most people believe they're living according to their own choices. In reality, many are making decisions inside an invisible courtroom where the jury exists almost entirely inside their own mind. More than a century ago, sociologist Charles Horton Cooley described an idea that still explains modern life with uncomfortable accuracy. He called it the looking glass self. His observation was simple but unsettling. We don't just see ourselves directly. We imagine how other people see us, imagine how they evaluate us, and then quietly build our identity around those imagined reactions. Not actual opinions, imagined ones. Someone replies with a short text, and you assume they're upset. Your boss says, "Can we talk tomorrow?" And your mind writes an entire disaster movie before the conversation even begins. But here's the irony almost nobody notices. While you're busy imagining what everyone thinks about you, they're usually busy imagining what everyone thinks about them. In 1959, novelist Ralph Ellison published a story about a man who becomes convinced that society genuinely cannot see him. Not literally, but socially. He called it Invisible Man. Ellison later explained something that reads almost like a psychology paper. He said most people spend their lives performing for an audience that has already stopped watching, terrified of a judgment that was mostly imagined to begin with. What made Ellison's observation so unsettling wasn't fiction. It was how precisely it mirrored something psychologists would prove decades later with hard data. Researchers call it the spotlight effect. In one now famous Cornell study, participants were asked to wear an embarrassingly noticeable t-shirt into a room full of strangers. Before walking in, they were convinced almost everyone would remember it. Afterward, only a small fraction of the room had even noticed. The lesson wasn't that people are cruel, it was the opposite. Most people were too occupied with their own insecurities to spend much time thinking about someone else's. The prison wasn't built by the crowd, it was built by the imagination. Once you see that pattern, you notice it everywhere. Someone delays replying, and your mind fills the silence with rejection. You hesitate to ask a question because everyone might think it's stupid. None of those decisions comes from reality. They come from predictions, stories your brain creates before the world has even had a chance to respond. And predictions have a dangerous habit of disguising themselves as facts. Eventually, you stop asking, "Is this true?" and start asking, "How do I avoid being judged?" That tiny shift quietly changes the direction of your entire life. Here's what makes this trap so difficult to escape. Every time you avoid a situation because you fear other people's opinions, your brain experiences immediate relief. That relief feels like proof you made the right decision. But psychologically, the opposite is happening. Your brain is learning that avoidance keeps you safe. The next time a similar situation appears, the fear arrives faster and stronger. Over time, your world becomes smaller. Not because people are controlling you, but because your imagination has convinced you they could. There's another illusion hiding beneath all of this, and it's more dangerous because it feels responsible. Most people believe they're protecting their reputation. In reality, They're often protecting a version of themselves that only exists inside someone else's imagination. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every decision quietly asks the same exhausting question: how will this make me look? But identity built on appearance has one fatal weakness. It can never rest, because the audience is always changing. Two people can watch the exact same version of you and walk away with completely different opinions. You were never managing reality. You were trying to manage hundreds of private stories that exist only inside other people's minds. This is why emotionally strong people don't become fearless. They become selective. Imagine a sailor crossing the ocean. He doesn't change direction every time a wave hits the boat, because waves aren't navigation, they're conditions. Opinions work the same way. Some contain useful information. Most are simply reflections of the person giving them. Once feedback and approval become separated, something remarkable happens. Criticism stops feeling like a verdict on your worth. It becomes data, sometimes useful, sometimes irrelevant, but never powerful enough to define who you are. Psychologists studying self-determination have found that people experience their deepest fulfillment when their choices come from internal values instead of external approval. Two people can achieve the exact same success and feel completely different afterward. One spent years chasing applause and discovers it disappears almost as quickly as it arrived. The other built their life around principles they would have followed even if nobody had noticed. Outwardly identical. Internally, different worlds. One depends on attention, the other depends on alignment. Attention shifts with trends, algorithms, and time. Principles don't. Maybe that's why the people who leave the strongest impression rarely seem obsessed with making one. Instead of wondering, will people approve, they quietly ask, is this consistent with the person I want to become? You stop dressing for invisible critics. You stop editing your personality to fit every room you enter. Ironically, this is often the moment people become more confident. Not because everyone suddenly likes them, but because their self-respect is no longer rented from other people's opinions. One day you'll realize that almost everyone you spent years trying to impress was fighting the exact same invisible battle, wondering what everyone else thought about them. The audience you feared was mostly looking in the mirror themselves. Once you understand that, something inside you becomes lighter. You stop treating every room like a courtroom. You stop seeing strangers as judges. Because in the end, confidence isn't built on the day people finally approve of you. It's built on the day their approval stops being the permission slip you needed to live according to your own values. And that's the moment your attention returns to the only place it ever truly belonged. Not inside someone else's opinion, but inside the life you're actually here to build.